Let's find majority element. So we're given an array nums of size n, and we're returning the majority element, which is an element that appears more than this amount of times, n divided by 2 floor. And in this case, we can ignore some edge cases because we're assuming that the majority element is always in the array. This is a pretty popular one, so make sure you know this. I'd say this question is the type of question that if you didn't know how to solve it previously, then it would be really hard for you to figure it out on the fly unless you were really smart. Because this question requires an algorithm called the Boyer-Moore algorithm. You can search that up and learn more about it. I'll try to explain it briefly here. So using the Boyer-Moore algorithm, we can find the majority element in this list. The other most common solution people come up with is to just sort the list and then get the middle element, because since the majority element always exists in the array, then a number in the middle will always be that majority element because of this condition. But that's O of n log n time complexity, and using the Boyer-Moore algorithm, we can reduce that to an O of n time complexity. So basically, we only have to go through the array once. The general idea behind this algorithm is that we're keeping track of the most frequent element, whether it is or not, while we go through the array and its number of appearances. And as we see more of that same element, we increase the number of appearances. If we see another element, we decrease the number of appearances. And if the number of appearances goes to 0, then we replace the element with the new element that we are checking. For example, I'm going to start with 3 here, and I'm going to call that the majority with an appearance of 1 time. When I move next to 2, it's not 3, so I subtract the appearance count and it goes to 0, which means I'll replace the majority element with 2. And then when I go to the next and last element, you can see it's not the same, so I subtract 1, becomes 0, and then I replace 2 with 3. And then it ends up as 3 being the majority element. And you might be wondering how this actually works. And that's a valid question, but I'm just going to memorize it, and I recommend you to do the same unless you have some free time and search up exactly how the logic works behind that, because it does feel a little bit like magic. So to start the code, I'm going to have a majority element, and I'm going to set that to the first number in the nums array. Then I'm going to have a count to count the frequency of that and initialize that to 1 because we're assuming we've seen the first number once. Now I will iterate through the rest of the array. And we'll have an index starting from 1 to the n because we're already keeping track of the first index. Our first condition is to check if the current number is equal to majority. And if it is, we'll just increase the count by 1. Else, we will decrease the count by 1. And after this, we'll check if the count is equal to 0. And if it's equal to 0, then we will set count equal to 1 and replace the majority with the current number. So this is basically exactly how I described it when I was going through the example, and you can see that this will work for all cases. And again, this will be O of n because we're only going through the array once, and this is also O of 1 space complexity because we're only keeping track of a count and a single element in the array.